This is the SBC Audio Experience Women in Sports series with guest Talyah Polee. What's up, beautiful people? My name is Kate Foley. I am here at Sports Business Classroom, the audio experience. Here at Hall Pass Media, we have a 4-part series, that's right, 4 parts, on women in sports. And we are gonna touch on anything and everything from philanthropic to mental health to the agency world and also to basketball ops and scouting. Each of these amazing women have awesome paths to their career. They have amazing expertise in their fields. I know that in somewhere in this 4-part series, there is something for everyone, and everybody will be able to take away some little nugget of information, experience, and something to draw on as they chase their dreams down the path of their career in sport. Welcome back to the next episode of Women in Sports here at the Sports Business Classroom Experience. I am so excited for everybody to meet our next guest, Miss Talyah Polee. She is blazing her field of expertise in sports psychology. She is Miss Colorado 2015. She also is an amazing track athlete, summer league intern, and she also was a client services coordinator at Wasserman. She has just a treasure trove of experience that she brings to this table and she brings to her current job as she works with athletes to make sure that their mental health is the top of mind as well as their physical health. Let's get to it. Thanks so much for coming on today. I'm so excited to have you here and just gain so much knowledge from you in the mental health world, but also as a woman in sports. Let's start off with, who was a role model for you growing up? Did you have a woman role model?
You know what? I would say somebody I admire right now is the executive director of the NBPA. So Tamika Tramillo is somebody who I admire, not only, through her community leadership and commitment to like youth development, more so like with the college preparedness and like the STEM education, she made like a profound impact, but, she's like the executive director of NBPA. So I admire her.
I love that. I love Krista Chen over there too. She's an amazing human being. Everybody over there, I think, when you look at the league and the NBPA and the evolution of the dedication that they're now seeing that has to be committed to these players, not only as athletes, right, but as people, and the support system that they need and the education that they need to continue to grow as people, not just players and player development, but just as people. It takes a toll on them. Like the lifestyle, we talk all the time about how the lifestyle that we all have to be committed to work in sports is probably like 1/10 of the level of commitment that it takes to be that elite superstar franchise player. And also the baggage that comes with that. Like there's a lot of pressure and baggage. I want to just like jump in and dive in. I have so many questions for you about things, but what was your experience as a student athlete? I mean, I know that you ran track, and so, that's a whole nother atmosphere and training routine, but kind of what was your experience as a student athlete, and what do you take from that into where you are now?
Oh my goodness. I think people don't realize, just kind of the psychological toll it kind of takes on you when you're trying to balance like being a student, being an athlete, and, just getting some of your basic needs met, right? Some of those needs, it's just basically like, am I getting like a nutritional diet in, right? Am I getting enough sleep? And so
yes.
Being able to just kind of balance a lot of those things was hard as an athlete, right? When you are traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast and you're like, am I eating breakfast or am I eating lunch? It's a big challenge. And I don't think people understand like the psychological toll it can take on an athlete.
Totally. And I mean, I think, we look at it at, we were just talking about the collegiate level, take it another step to the pro level. You have one of the most unique backgrounds. I love this, that you are in, sports. Would you say your field's like pretty heavily male dominated, or is it pretty like even in the psychology world and, sports psychology?
I would say in the sports psychology aspect, I would say it's a little bit more male dominant, but if you want to look at it from a more holistic clinical lens, it's more female dominant.
As more.
But I would say more so for sports psychology, you see a lot more males that kind of dominate in that space.
Do you find, and I think this is always so interesting to me because I have to laugh because I feel like I have this like unfair stigma to psychology of I feel like if when I meet someone that's a psychologist, I feel like I'm always being analyzed. So you'll have to send me my recap later of what the analysis is. But what, for you, what made you want to turn from like athlete to psychology? Like, how did you make that shift? Was there a moment that you had an aha moment or was there something specific where you had to lean on psychology as a student athlete and that kind of opened your eyes to the way you could stay connected to sports?
You know what? I would say I didn't have an aha moment. It was just something that I was like grounded and rooted in. I always found myself engaging in some sort of mindfulness intervention when it came to, any sort of track event that I had. And so I asked myself, I'm like, I'm not going to take this to a professional level. Like, I'm going to take this a little bit more so towards being grounded as a therapist, right?
Yeah.
That's what I want to be professional in. I didn't see myself just kind of taking my track career into more of a professional realm in that way, but I've always been grounded in the space of, how can we meet the essential needs of human beings, whether that was just for me being supportive to my teammates or being supportive to my family or, even just myself. How can I meet my basic essential needs? So I've always just been grounded and rooted in this sort of role.
I love that. And it's not your traditional like sports psychology. What's the evolution of it? I mean, I know that now we're seeing it more prevalently, throughout a lot of sports leagues and teams as an additional layer of support for these athletes. That hasn't always been the case. What do you feel and what's kind of the timeline of when teams started to realize that that's important? Like we need to support them, not only physically, but mentally. They say, your brain is a muscle too, and you have to work out your mental health just like you do your physical health. When, in your experience in the industry, when did you start to see like a shift into people really taking sports psychology seriously?
You know what? I honestly started to see a real shift, I'd say, within less than the last 10 years, right? Where every team made it a mandate where they had to have some sort of psychological service provided to a team, right? Whether if you had a therapist that was on call or retainer for the team, or if they had like an actual sports psychologist that was there. So I'd say within the last 10 years, it's been a transformative action in the professional sports world to have some sort of psychological service ready for these individuals.
How do you, when you come on and we have these athletes, they're not very trusting, right? Somebody wants something from them. Everybody wants something or needs something from them. How do you sit down and you sit with them. You want them to open up. You want them to be real. You want them to actually tell you the tea and what's going on so you can help them. How do you kind of assess and start to build that trust with somebody you don't know on such an intimate level? Like that's got to be challenging.
It is challenging. I mean, if you think about it, you have a client that's just walking into a room or here in the virtual land sitting right in front of you, and you're a complete stranger. And, you want them to just kind of open up and talk about just the most vulnerable pieces of their lives, but it's all about building trust. Building trust with your clients and creating a safe place for that individual to be vulnerable, free of judgment. And, it's therapy. And I feel as a place for an individual to kind of open up at their pace, right? We can't rush it. We can't rush some of the traumas that they want to disclose to you or, some of the anxieties that they're experiencing on the field or on the court. So, creating a safe place for them to be vulnerable is how I kind of approach it, through rapport building and empathy.
I love that. I think, I've had some of my athletes and athletes I've worked with who, very clearly needed some mental health assistance and support. But we're also very, I'm good, I don't need it, very standoffish with it, because I think now we're seeing a change where mental health is top of mind, top of conversation. And, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I wouldn't say it was looked down on, but it wasn't as open and honest of struggles of people that are financially stable, household names and franchises, making millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. It was kind of unheard of for them to kind of like raise their hand and be like, hey, I need an outlet. I need somewhere to go. I need someone to help me process. It's been really cool to see, but how would you say, for people that want to get somebody mental health help, but the person that they want to help doesn't want to help themselves.
Yeah, you see it all the time, right? And you're speaking to an individual and you're like, okay, this individual does need like an outlet that's outside of their circle,
Yeah.
right? Outside of their current support system that they have, whether that's a spouse, whether that's a partner or a mom or dad, right? And it's all about readiness, right?
Right.
A person has to be ready. A person has to be at a place where they want to open up, where they want to talk to somebody. So I think it's all about readiness. Like we can't force or press something on that someone's not ready to engage in when, it's not the right time.
For sure. And I think that's like spot on, right? Like it might be needed, but it's not wanted. Right. And I think that's
Absolutely.
how I kind of like define it, as like you see these things and you see, now you see some mistakes that are being made and opportunities to make better choices within some, high profile athletes and within leagues and teams. How, as a consumer, how do you explain to the average everyday, my grandma, for sake of, what kind of toll the limelight and lifestyle it takes on them from a celebrity status? I know they sign up for it. I don't want anybody coming for me that they don't make millions of dollars, but at the end of the day, they're people. And how do you explain that to somebody, of what does that take from somebody when they give that to their career?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely. It's how I'd want to explain that to somebody is we're all human beings with needs, right? And a lot of us have unmet needs. And if we were to kind of think about this from a psychological standpoint, we have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So in order to kind of reach that self-actualization of creativity, in order to be able to be creative on the court or on the field and be able to perform, we have to have a lot of our psychological needs met, right? And, how can we reach that? That's through therapy, right?
Yeah.
You may see an individual who appears to be externally flashy on the outside and the world is just glitz and glamour, and you think that they're, just living this lavish lifestyle,
Right.
But they are a human being, right?
Right.
They have psychological needs that need to be met.
Okay, so before this, you were at Wasserman. You were a client services coordinator. We talked to Ashley Cox earlier today. She's the client servicing. How do you feel, for you, what was your path into Wasserman and client servicing? Like what, you were obviously a summer league intern. So kind of walk me through summer league intern to Wasserman. What happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So NBA Summer League was my introduction into, just the world of sports, kind of on the opposite side of being an athlete. And so I interned with NBA Summer League, I'd say for goodness, about 8 years, along with Adidas Nations. And Albert Hall is my guy. I call him family. He's an uncle, and introduced me to, one of his really close friends, an agent at Wasserman. And the introduction was there. I had such an amazing time, being a client service to some of these guys. I was able to really see, life on the other side of the court with them. So that was my introduction, just kind of the grit there as an intern. It led me to a career, at Wasserman for about 5 years.
When you were there, and one of the things I think we all, as women in sports experience, it's a male dominated industry, right? And, sometimes we're kind of forced or placed, is a better word, into a box of this is your job and this is what you can do, and not given an opportunity to grow. Do you feel like for you, for me, I've had those experiences where I have been kind of limited in my ability to grow because somebody wanted the accolade, somebody wanted the notoriety. It was do your job. Have you ever been in an experience as a woman, where you felt like you kind of were not you could say disrespected, right? Like you were kind of put in a place where you weren't given the same opportunity as some of the men that might have been your colleagues or counterparts?
I would say absolutely. I feel like it unfortunately is the norm that us women face in this industry, right? And so, what I leaned on and what I want to echo to all of the, young women who want to get into, the sports world is use your voice.
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Use your voice and remember who you are and
Yeah.
what you bring to the table.
Yep.
And that's what I really leaned on, and that's what I'm grounded in.
No, I love that. I always say that to everybody is, you walk in a room, own the room, command the room, and don't be afraid and feel like, you can't have an opinion. You can't have an expertise. You have to wait to be called on. Like, no, like we're here. And I think one of the things that, for me as a woman, I have a young daughter, right? Like I want to make sure that I'm creating experiences for women beyond myself that are coming after me, right? So what standard am I setting? Who am I showing up as? What level of professionalism am I bringing to an experience or an opportunity that then someone else can lean on, right? And they can say, okay, like I saw this. It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to not play basketball and work in basketball. I don't play basketball. You didn't play basketball. Like I think it's a stigma of, in order to work in sports, you have to play sports. In order to work in basketball, you have to play basketball. Right. I think that's more so for women than men. Like, I don't think anyone's saying to a guy, okay, well, you played baseball, you can't work in the NBA. But if they were to say, okay, Kate, you were a cheerleader, but you can't work in the NBA. They're saying those things because it's like, well, you don't know. And it's used against you a little bit. I feel like of my experience is different than someone else's. And so they oftentimes I've found people like want to use it against you. And I'm like, no, that's a benefit. Like for me, I'm bringing to the table something that all of you over here are the same. You all played basketball. Yeah. You're all players. You're all coaches. I'm different than you because I bring something else to the table that you guys don't. And instead of it being a negative, it should be like encapsulated and encouraged as a positive. And I think for women kind of just standing in that and owning that, but also women in leadership positions like yourself and, Ashley, myself and Erica, like really having an opportunity to do it, but then stand in it. Don't talk the talk, honey, like stand in it and do it because somebody else is watching from you and learning from you. And that's, for me, when I look at women in sports, there's very few women agents in the NBA. And, one of our other guests said that she's memorable because she is, 6'2" and redhead. And, I laugh because I'm like, it's so true. It's easier for them to remember you than it is for you to remember the 800 other colleagues that you have in that space. Right. What for you, has been something that really challenged you to kind of dig in and own yourself, like you were talking about? Like, do you have a story you can share with us of like, I had this negative situation where someone actually said I wasn't going to be good at my job because I had just had a baby. And I was like, wow, like, okay, like it was another woman. And I'm like, how is a woman saying that to another woman? And it really, for me, stuck and it hurt and it stung, girl. And I was like, oh, but then I was like, you know what? I'm about to show you. Watch and learn. Like, here we go. And now, I have all these clients with daughters that are like, she's so cool. Like, this is awesome. Like, and they love that I can be a mom and have a career. And that's kind of the evolution that we're facing right now, where you don't have to choose anymore. Have you had one of those moments where you're like stung, but then you kind of were like, okay.
I would say I have so many different examples of that. I think people want to keep you in a box.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You can only do one thing in life. And I had to say to myself, well, why can't I do it all?
Yeah.
Right. Why can't I be an athlete? Why can't I, be a student at the same time? Why can't I, decide I want to be a therapist and also create certain screening tools that I want to develop, right? Why can't I do it all? Why do I have to be in this box that you want to create for me? And so what I utilize with that is I allowed that to create some sort of fire in me, right? Yeah. And I wanted to own the table. Right? Yeah. I don't want to just sit at the table. I want to own the table to show you what I belong.
So true. It's like, I don't want to own like an apartment. I want to own the building. Like there's a little saying like, I'll be back to buy the building. Don't worry. Like 100%, 100%. Yes. No, and I think too, for women, one of the things, I always try and just from a mental health capacity is, realize we all make mistakes. We all have opportunities to learn, right? And, making sure that I don't hold myself to an unreasonable standard of stress on myself. I mean, I look at from my lens how much baggage I carry that isn't mine, that is from clients to work to a company to employees. Like, you kind of got to wear a bunch of different hats. How do you, when you look at, I actually had a young lady ask me, she said she was asked in an interview if she wanted to have kids. And I literally almost fell out of my chair because I'm like, first of all, how inappropriate is that to ask some young woman? But secondly, like, who cares? Like, for real, who cares? But how would you say to young women that want to get into sports, what would be your 3 most important things that you would say they should bring to a job, to an opportunity, right? Like, what are 3 things that when you show up to work, bring these 3 things with you?
Yeah, no, I would say, be a woman with a mission, a vision, and a purpose. Right. And those are the things that I hang on to no matter what table I'm sitting at. Be that woman with a mission, a vision, and a purpose. And if people don't see that mission, vision, or purpose, hey, keep pursuing it. Keep doing it and win.
Yes. No, I think that's so important. We often want an easy yes, and the no's are really hard. And I think so many times, especially like my career, I've heard no more than I've heard yes. Yeah. And I joke now that, a no just means either you're not the right person to talk to or I'm going to find a different way. I try not to take it as a negative and more as like okay, well, let's try it a different way. Because I think so many times it's easy to be like, okay, I tried. Didn't work out. We talked to Ashley earlier about how she had different internships and they just weren't panning out. And she was kind of like, is this for me? Should I be doing this? And, I think part of that is just self-doubt. I also think part of that is women are not supported or uplifted enough by male leadership. And so, when they have an opportunity to create a cohesive unit or a platform for them to showcase the skill set, oftentimes it's not overlooked, I wouldn't say, but I feel like sometimes it's just not at the forefront of their mind as an opportunity to change a narrative because life's busy. You have a billion thoughts. You aren't recognizing opportunities. What would you say to somebody who feels like they've tried every angle to get into sports and they just aren't seeing the fruits of their labor they'd like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say keep trying. I mean, I've been there, right?
Yeah,
I've been there too. And I was knocking on doors, trying different keys, and it just wasn't fitting. And I think everything is all about timing, right? And patient, being patient with yourself, right? We're going to have self-doubt, like you mentioned. Everybody has self-doubts. But I think just being patient with yourself, but then also being grounded with yourself that, I believe in me. I believe in this mission, vision, and purpose, right? And it's just all about timing. One of my favorite quotes by, the late, great Kobe Bryant was, we all have self-doubts, right? You don't deny it, but you also don't, capitulate in it or capitulate to it. You embrace it, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one of the things that I kind of ground myself in and hold on to, even though imposter syndrome is going to come in when you're sitting at the table, just remind yourself that I belong.
Now, have you ever had an experience where you felt like you were overlooked on an opportunity or discriminated against because you are a female in a male-dominated industry, like where you weren't taken seriously or you weren't taken as like, somebody with as much experience or expertise as maybe a male counterpart?
You said an experience that I've had?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Girl, you really tested my memory here. I mean, I could have stories for days and days and days on
I
that.
love it.
But I decided I'm going to create my own door.
Yeah.
And that door is what I'm doing now.
I love that. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fair to say that probably everybody at some point in their life has experienced some type of, whether that's, discrimination, whether that's gender, race, ethnicity, like anything. There's been somewhere in your life where you haven't been treated properly and you get to make the decision of, am I going to let that affect me or empower me? And I think for me, when I look at it from a female standpoint, is oftentimes, most people don't expect to see me when I walk in as an MBA agent. And so I use that to my advantage as much as I can, because it allows me to, one, be different. And two, I get to observe people before they know who I am. And it shows me when they don't know who I am, how they're going to treat me. And what I've been able to do from that is realize, like, I also need to be responsible for that as well, because I don't know who all these people are. So when you show up authentically as yourself consistently, it doesn't matter who you're meeting, because they're getting the real version of you, regardless if it's the janitor, the trash man, the president, the CEO, or the bank guy. It doesn't matter. They're getting the same version of you, and people crave authenticity because this world is full of such fake facades. One of the things that I found so interesting from an athlete level is the I don't know, maybe it's imposter syndrome. Maybe you can help me understand it. But they are this version of a person for the fan, and then they're actually who they are. And some of that narrative is driven by media, stories, brands, etc. But sometimes they're often two different versions of themselves, and they struggle with which one am I more of, which am I not. They love me because I'm this person on the court, but then at home I'm not that person. So does that make me less than? How have you seen, or have you had an experience with athletes at that level trying to balance the versions of themselves that people create for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we show up as different people constantly, right?
Constantly.
As an athlete, right? I wear the hat of, I'm the point guard of the team, right? Or I'm the quarterback of the team. And it's like, I am in this role. This is who I am. This is who people love. But then there's a disconnect, because I am the complete opposite when I'm at home, right? And I'm actually like this person who's just reading Harry Potter, and I'm like the completely opposite person. So it is a challenge for a lot of these guys, right? And even a lot of these women as well, in this role as an athlete. And it's a challenge. But one thing is when they have to flip through between those two different modes and those personalities, it's hard. No. It is so hard for them. And I don't think a lot of people understand how much that can play a toll on them.
Totally. And I think it's hard too. I try and give myself grace and everybody grace. I can't show up 100% every day. I don't have it to give. Like I don't. And, I try and remind myself that that's okay. As long as I'm showing up the best way I can that day, that's okay. Okay. I want to ask you some super fun questions. What was your first interview, and how did it go? Like, what was your first interview, and what was the good and the bad, the ugly on that one?
Oh, goodness. My first interview, I was being interviewed by NBC, actually. I was Miss Colorado USA, and I had joined one of the morning shows, and I was a nervous wreck. I actually tripped coming on to the interview. Good thing that it showed.
No.
But I remember that vividly. But that was actually one of my first interviews I've ever had. Yeah.
Oh, so see, you can trip and you can stumble, but the humble don't fumble. That's what I say. The humble don't fumble. No, I love it. What was your first job? Like your very first job?
Del Taco.
Del Taco.
Yes, I did. I was the cashier.
What? I love it.
That was my first job. Yeah,
I love it. No, I think it's so important because, your path has been so, it has so many pivots and turns in it. And, you just talked about you were Miss Colorado. Like, here's Miss Colorado, everybody. Hold on. 2015, right?
Yeah.
Miss Colorado. And she now works in the NBA. So for everybody out there saying that you have to fit in this box to do this, why? Explain. Make it make sense. It doesn't. And I think that's what's so cool about it is when you get to bring so much experience to a role that requires, like your role requires you to wear a lot of hats, and you have to know how to, one person might need this push, one person might need that push. everybody's ticks and what makes them tick is different. And you are tasked with trying to get the best out of them on a different level every time. It's not like, they're shooting free throws and it's the same. Everyone has to shoot free throws and the basket doesn't move. You're asking them to dig deep and like really evaluate themselves as a person in order to perform at the highest level possible. And not everybody works the same. I'm pretty sure what I need and what Ashley needs are different. How do you balance that? Like, that's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's sometimes tough, right? You're carrying people's deepest, darkest secrets sometimes and their traumas, right? And what I do for myself, I have to help self-care too, right? And I have to remind myself, like, I'm here with this client, I am here present with them, but I can't take this with me, right? I'm going to leave it right here.
Not mine to carry.
When the session's over, but, self-care is so important, and especially into this field, when we're working with peoples and traumas. Yeah.
So in this industry is like 365, 24/7. What do you say to these young, kids and young people? And I keep saying kids. Why should I say kids? Because someone's probably going to call in and hate me on that one. What would you say to, the younger version of yourself that was trying to find her way into what she wanted to do? What would you say to her now knowing what you know, what would you say to her then?
Be persistent and win. Be persistent and win. If the key doesn't fit, keep trying, keep going, keep moving.
I love it. No, I think, look, like we talk about these athletes and how, they're asked to be so much for so many people. And that is something they have chosen to do. With everything that's going on now, and, we see it, almost weekly in the news of opportunities to make better decisions. What would you say is in your mind, is there like a factor that comes into, like, I call it the boiling point? Like, is there just pressure, boiling point? Or is it about who you surround yourself with? Like, I think about it even from like my career and my perspective, you are the company that you keep. And sometimes not everybody gets to go with you to the next level. Not everybody's supposed to be a part of your story. And when I look at, these people that want to get into sports, and, sports is an industry that leaves much to desire from like a human care, kindness level. As a woman, we're empathetic, we're intuitive, we feel a lot. We have the ability to problem solve and dilute what is necessary to get to the other side, I think sometimes in a healthier, kinder manner. What would you say to, these young people as they want to be in sports, but they also want to live their lives? What's important from a focus standpoint? Like, we talk about social media, right? Like, I can Google anybody on social media. It's out there. We can find it. What would you say is like a healthy balance between somebody who wants to go into a professional career, but also wants to live their life as, a college or a younger professional that's just trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I would say, having a healthy work-life balance. Sometimes we can be so deeply rooted into our crafts to where, we don't create time for play, right?
Yeah.
We don't create time for any sort of chances just to live, right? Try it out. Try it all out, right? Sometimes we don't even know which direction we want to go, right? Whether we want to work with a team, whether we want to work for an agency, whether we want to be in our own private sector, right? I'd say just try it all out. Yeah. Try it all out. Whichever direction you want to go, just try it.
Do you have anything in your path to where you are today that you're like, I wish I would have handled that situation different, or a situation that you wish you would have handled differently that now impacts how you handle situations now?
I would say I wouldn't change a thing, because how I operate now are based off of my learning experiences in the past, right? I wouldn't change a thing. And I know that sounds very cliche, but how would I know? How would I grow?
Yeah. No, I think it's so true. I think so many times we're so focused on getting to the next thing that we forget that all of this is like a part of our process. And, what for you, from your kind of lens, we look at these athletes, they're getting younger and younger. The pressures are getting more and more. They're making more and more money. Everybody wants or needs or is supported by them. How do you, that could be anybody. That could be an athlete. That could be a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad. Like, everybody has those kind of pressures. What are a couple takeaways you can share with us, from a psychology standpoint of ways, excuse me, of ways to just, not get so overwhelmed with the pressures that come from, everyday society now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot.
It's a lot, girl. My back hurts. It's a lot sometimes.
Yes, it is. You transition overnight, right? One moment you're in pre-draft, right? You're in the pre-draft process. You're hoping you get drafted. Okay, so it's your night. You get drafted, and then your life changes in the moment. And all of a sudden, you're taking care of your entire family, right? You're taking care of your sister, paying for her tuition. You're supporting everyone's housing. It is heavy. It is a lot for them to carry on to, right? And so I like to share with my clients is like, what do you need, right? And how are we going to be able to take care of yourself? Because you're carrying everything. You're carrying your family.
Yeah.
You're carrying a lot, so what can we do to get your needs met? Right?
Totally.
Where can we find moments in the day where you can just log onto your Xbox and just put do not disturb on your phone because you want to zone out to get your needs met? And that need is rest and me time.
No,
right?
totally.
Yeah.
No. What for you, when we look at mental health and we look at some things in the media that we're seeing now, walk us through really quickly, you said every team's required to have a mental health expert available to the guys. I know some teams that I've worked with, it's mandatory. You got to check in. Some of them it's optional. Some of them it's case by case. How does that work for, from a perspective standpoint? You're paid by the team, but you're talking to the athlete. How, if I'm them, I'm like, hey, are you reporting back everything that I'm saying to my boss upstairs that made me come talk to you? Or is it more like, we're seeing this change. And again, I love that all these teams are having these mental health experts because I think it's such a needed space. And it's also making it more acceptable is a good word. It's making it more aware that this is an epidemic of mental health that needs to be addressed and treated and made okay. Like, it's okay to feel. It's okay to need a day. It's I was joking with one of my friends. You see little kids like act out and throw a tantrum, but like, they're just little versions of adult. You know how many days I'm like, I feel exactly like what you're acting like. Like, I really do. It's just not acceptable for me to lay on the floor
right,
and do that. But I feel that right now. I'm right here. We're together. How do you do, from a team perspective? Does the team call you and say, hey, can you talk to this person? Or does the player have to reach out? Or how does that kind of work?
Confidentiality, it's something we're grounded and rooted in, and I like to remind my clients the limits of confidentiality, right? But anything that they're sharing with me is kept between me and the client, right? It's not going to be shared with the agent. It's not going to be shared with, the team or anybody. It's kept right here. Yeah. So I often like to remind them of those things.
Do you feel like we're making progress from, we'll talk about the NBA because we're talking about it today. Like, do you feel like we're making progress on awareness? We see so many players, DeMar DeRozan did that amazing episode with Oprah and Prince Harry about the me you don't see, talking about his struggle, with mental health. And we just saw somebody else put out another article the other day about how they, weren't themselves making the right choices. And, do you see the impact that it's having beyond sports of people of influence and celebrity and platform to use it to raise awareness and humanize themselves to make it okay for somebody else to like need help, or want help?
Absolutely. I mean, it's being normalized now, right?
Yeah.
If you were to think about it in the baby boomer generation, it was like, oh no, mental health, like that's not a thing, right?
Right.
And the fact that I just love it that, celebrities or athletes, are normalizing this space for mental health, that it's okay to seek help. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have big emotions. Right. But I love this transition. I remember one of the first platforms that I actually saw it on and someone normalizing it was Metta World Peace. And after one of the championships that he had with the Lakers, he mentioned, I want to shout out my psychologist for being there for me, right? And people are like, oh my gosh, he's in therapy, he's crazy. But he normalized it then, right? He normalized it. I want to shout out to my therapist for being my rock and being there for me.
Yeah. It takes a village. Like I say that all the time of like even in a regular household, it takes a village, no one person can hold up. It's a foundation that's built. As we kind of close out this segment, what do you foresee, in the future of sports for women? Where do you see us continuing to make strides and grow?
Oh goodness, I see, us being at the executive level, I see us, changing the way the table looks, right? I mean, we have a director of the NBPA, executive director, who is a female, right? We have referees who are females in the NFL, right? We have the first, NFL agent who's representing a quarterback right there in the championship, right, of the NFL championship, the Super Bowl. So I see it changing in all aspects,
I know. I think it's just going to continue to grow and change. And, we're all tasked with making a path for the next wave of amazing young women to continue to have opportunities and create, that diverse table of expertise and experience, but also characteristics and personalities, and I think that when I look at sports, I do think, my dream is to see a female GM, I would love to see it, maybe it'll be me one day, but probably not in my time. But
oh no, we gotta believe.
Yeah, listen, ask, believe, receive, baby. Ask, believe, receive. No, I just, I can't thank you enough for your time and just your insight into kind of the day-to-day that it takes to, get people to open up, create a space that's safe and inviting for them to do so, but also just your path. I mean, literally like Miss Colorado, like I can't even go girl, like, yes, please. But also just how that is so different than most people's path to, to the sports world and the sports industry, to now where you're able, looking back, I bet you weren't like, oh, I'm Miss Colorado, I'm going to be able to apply this to, my dream job. No, but now it's like, wow, like I can actually, how I answer things, I have how you respond, you have that poise about you that is ingrained in you through pageants, right? Of how you respond and communicate is so helpful to you in your role now when you're asked really hard questions. You're put in situations that are very, I call them dumpster fires. Like literally, that's just the world's burning and what do we do? You have just such a diverse lens that you're able to look through things. It's so inspiring. Like you're changing the world. I'm just sitting at this table.
Oh my goodness. No, thank you. I appreciate that.
You are making the world a better place. I'm just sitting at the table. I want to champion you to keep doing that. But is there anything for you, as you turn to sports, is there anything for you where you were like, I love sports, I want to work in sports? Was that NBA Summer League? Like, what was that? You came from the pageant world, you obviously ran track, but like, what was your moment where you're like, I want to work in sports forever?
It was Summer League.
Summer League did it?
It was Summer League all the way, just from the calmness of the gym and then watching it fill up.
Yep.
It's just the energy of all of that, of just kind of watching more of the behind the scenes of how all of this is just developed for the fans to see, right? Yeah. It's all began at Summer League.
It all began at Summer League. Albert and Warren will be so happy to hear that. Like literally, that'll probably be a soundbite on Warren's phone when you call him next. It'll just say it all started at Summer League. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. You were awesome. And hopefully I get to meet you in person soon next time I'm in Vegas.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. That's going to conclude our series of Women in Sports. I could not be more grateful that each of you decided to tune in, take some notes, learn a lot, but also make sure that you apply it as you chase your dreams and your career in sports. The women were amazing. The knowledge, unmatched. I had an amazing time working with all of them, learning from them, but also sharing that experience with everybody here. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Kate Foley from the table at Hall Pass Media, Sports Business Classroom Experience. I'm signing off. Until next time, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.